And now, here's Dr. Mike.
Hey, friends, thank you so much for joining me today. It's Monday at 6 o'clock here in Ohio. It's raining outside, it's overcast. And so I want to tell you right now, when it's overcast, raining, and all of that stuff in Ohio, then our internet connection is not that good. So I'm just giving you a warning. If I get dropped off of here, Kathy was sweating bullets a little bit earlier because I told her, if I get dropped, you got to carry the show, honey. So what's going on? What's going on? Some of you tried to get in through the drmikelive.com website. Well, that's not working tonight because Kathy and I are trying something ourselves. Kathy is actually engineering this show. We're broadcasting it on all of the normal platforms that we would. And so some of you who join us normally through the huddle, get into the green room and so forth, that option's not available today because we're trying something different. So a couple of things. We're on the backside now of Go Therefore 2020. The conference was this past weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was a fantastic conference. A lot of positive feedback, in spite of the fact, folks, that it was online only. We didn't like it. I didn't like it. Kathy didn't like it. Most of you didn't like it. In fact, most of the speakers voiced that same thing. Didn't really care for it being online, but the circumstances being what they are, complications that have been forced on us, shall I say, made it necessary to do it this way. So thank you to those who did join us, who registered for that conference. And by the way, you can still register even today. GoThereforeConference.com. Every one of the presentations are archived, available for the next couple of weeks for you to view. Kathy and I managed to view most of them now. We tried to see all of them live in real time, and a couple of them that we missed, we went back late last night and watched those. Fantastic messages from every one of those speakers. Again, Tom Dunn, Pastor Casper McLeod, Carl Tykrib, Pastor Brandon Gallups, Coach Dave Daubenmeyer, Tom Navolis, Dr. Rich Petrus, Pastor Carl Gallups, L.A. Marzulli, David Hevner, Preston Condra, Michael Bodia, Dr. Michael Lake, Stephen Minking, David Paxton, Jamie Walden, Russ Dizdar, Lynn Frederick, Doug Woodward, Patrick Wood, and Dr. Andy Woods. A lineup that you're not going to see anyplace else. You're not going to find that anyplace else. So all of those speakers presented. It was a fantastic conference. I really appreciate every one of those men that I just named, their willingness to participate in this online conference. A little bit different. So today, a couple of things you'll see back behind me, a transforming word. So Kathy and I decided to create some ministry apparel. Some folks like that, and so we have ministry apparel that we're going to make available to folks that support this ministry. The transforming word, you see that behind me. You can contact me for information on how you can acquire some of that. Pastor Mike at cclohio.org. Pastor Mike at cclohio.org if you're interested in that. And let folks know that this ministry is growing and expanding, and we've got some projects that are in the works, and I think you'll be very, very encouraged by those. So what's going on today? Well, got a number of things that I want to talk to you about. I don't have a guest scheduled for today. Things were up in the air, and so with the conference and everything concluding yesterday, I didn't even attempt to schedule anybody to join me. And Kathy said, Mike, don't worry about it because people like it when you do the show yourself. So if that's the case, then a lot of you folks will be happy. I'm going to do the show myself today. Something that's really been on my mind and on my heart a lot recently has to do with what is going on in America today, and really what I see as the responses coming from Christians, coming from ministry leaders, coming from pastors, um, and so I just want to share some thoughts, and they're going to be as we get started. They're going to be from this book, Upside Down in America: What Went Wrong and How Do We Make It Right Again? Um, Forward by Dr. Michael Lake. This is a book that I recently released, and it's a book that I would encourage you to get a copy of. It's available through Amazon. It's available through the Gatekeepers Online. The GK Podcast Network has it in their store. You can get copies directly from me if you would like. And again, if you want a copy from me, they are $20, $3 shipping and handling to me at P.O. Box 3007, Elida, Elida, Ohio 45807. Again, Upside Down in America. A couple of passages of scripture that I want to share with you, and then I want to give some commentary. And I've got some articles that I found that interested me, and I posted on some of my media platforms. Job 8:3 says this: Does God pervert justice? Boy, that's a great question, isn't it? Does God pervert justice? Well, the obvious answer is no, he doesn't. Does God pervert justice, or does the Almighty pervert what is Job 8:3? Leviticus 19:15 and 16 says this: You shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor defer to the great. You are to judge your neighbor fairly. You shall not go about as a slanderer among your people. You are not to act against the life of your neighbor. I am the Lord. That's Leviticus chapter 19, verses 15 and 16. So in my book, in one of the last chapters of the book, I wrote about social justice and how it is a perversion of true justice, and how social justice is actually injustice. Injustice. Social justice is a Trojan horse, folks, of communism. Communism, for those of you who have been following this show and this ministry for a while, you've heard me say this a dozen times if I've said it once. Communism is Satanism. Socialism is communism light. Socialism is a distraction. It attempts to appeal to the heart over the mind. Socialism is a soft landing into communism. Socialism, therefore, is satanic. It is Satanism. Why do we have such a large majority, especially among young people, who are enamored with socialism? Well, because they've been taught, indoctrinated in the government propaganda camps known as public schools to believe this nonsense. It is absolutely tragic, but it's also amazing that we have the records, we have the history being played out right before our eyes. In fact, in Venezuela, in many other nations, communist China, we have the proof of the end result of socialism slash communism, which is the destruction of freedom, liberty, and public property, and people's lives and welfare. There is no prosperity in communism. It is statism. The only prosperity are for those elitists that are in control. And yet we have young people, a large swath, even in the church, Christians, who of all people should know better, do not know better. And they're doing nothing more than mouthing sound bites and sound bites, folks, you understand, a sound bite has no depth. That if you press someone who is given to a sound bite ideology, well, they'll fold like a cheap suit after you start asking them questions related to what they believe, because it doesn't hold up to the scrutiny of truth. So I included in this chapter an investigative report done by Julie Royals. Now, some of you follow Julie on social media. She recently wrote an article about socialism, listing 5 reasons that socialism is not biblical and it should be rejected without consideration and without quarter. It must be objected completely and absolutely. Here's why. Socialism is based on a materialistic worldview. Now, I've said this a lot over the years. It is very, very important that Christians understand what a biblical worldview is. If they do not understand or do not have or possess a biblical worldview, then they are ripe for the pickings for those who hate God. That's what happens in large measure to young people when they go off to college. They've been raised in the church, they've been taught all of the stories, but they've never risen above Sunday school theology. Folks, I've got to tell you something. If your children are headed off to college and all they've ever received and they've never got past a Sunday school theology, they're going to be a train wreck when they get to college, because those professors don't play. They are out for blood. Really, they are out to change people, young people who profess faith in Christ. They are out to prove Christianity wrong, that God is a myth. They want to destroy young people's faith and turn them into a mirror image of what they are, which is atheistic, in the least, agnostic. We need to understand that our education system in America is broke. It is not repairable, folks. Let's agree on this point. It is not repairable. There is no fixing the public education system in America. And I'm not just talking about K through 12. I'm talking about secondary education. Our universities and our colleges, with very few exceptions, are nothing more than cesspools of depravity and satanic nonsense. If you have an opportunity, homeschool your children. Make sure you are homeschooling your children. There is no substitute. In fact, it is a biblical command. You're responsible, mom and dad, for the education of your children. Part of the issue we face today as Americans is that too many parents have pushed the responsibility for the education of their children off to people that all they know is their first and last name, and maybe they meet them 2 or 3 times a year in parent-teacher conferences. That's a sad, sad reality today. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this materialistic worldview. Materialistic worldview is really atheism. It's atheism. It's a worldview. A materialistic worldview is, as apologist Francis Schaeffer said many, many years ago. And by the way, if you're not acquainted, not familiar with Schaeffer and his apologetics ministry, he is someone that I, even to this day, greatly admire. He has stood the test of time. He is one that we can look up to and learn much. I cut my teeth on apologetics by reading Schaeffer. And I have to admit to you, as a very young Christian, when I got a hold of his books that he wrote, there was a lot of stuff went right over my head. And I had to read it 3 and 4 times before it finally sunk in, took root, and I began to understand. Schaeffer is really responsible for my own interest and my own life path or trajectory in my background in education in apologetics. I owe a great deal of that to Francis Schaeffer, his work, ministry, especially his publishing ministry. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a materialistic worldview tonight and what that means exactly. And we're going to try, because Kathy is such a professional at this and she does such a great job. So all that stuff that you see scrolling along, banners and all that stuff, Kathy is doing that. She's actually engineering the show. So hat tip to my beautiful wife Kathy for taking this project on. Um, so investigative reporter, radio show host Julie Royals wrote this article, and it was just, I don't know, 7, 8 months ago. So it's recent because the book just came out, I think, March. Here are the 5 points about socialism that Christians need to understand and reasons why we should be rejecting it. Number one, socialism is based on a materialistic worldview. Again, more on that in a moment. Socialism punishes virtue. How about that? Socialism punishes virtue. Socialism endorses stealing. Socialism endorses theft. Fourth, socialism encourages envy and class warfare. Fifth, socialism seeks to destroy marriage and family. So again, these 5 points, socialism is based on a materialistic worldview. It punishes virtue. It endorses stealing. It endorses and encourages envy and class warfare. And it seeks to destroy marriage and family. Now, where do you see all of those things being expressed today? Well, all across college campuses, they're all part of Marxism, communism. But guess what else they're a part of? They're all a part of Antifa, and they're all a part of Black Lives Matter. In my presentation for the Go There For conference recently concluded, I gave a lot of and these 5 points all fit within the doctrine of Black Lives Matter. It is an antichrist, spirit of the age movement, Black Lives Matter. We've known that from Antifa, and the reason that I'm hammering on Black Lives Matter is because we have corporations all over America that are stumbling all to this anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-God movement. And I'll tell you a big reason why they're doing it, because they don't want these scoundrels coming after them. They don't want the corporate nightmare. They would rather sacrifice the allegiance of the silent majority to purchase their products, patronize their businesses. They would rather risk sacrificing that than to come on the radar screen of these radical Satanists going by the name Black Lives Matter. One of the most troubling aspects about Roy's list is that Christians just a few short generations ago would have readily identified these 5 things as being anathema to true biblical Christianity. But because true biblical Christianity and how it relates, how it explains, how it defines, how it rebukes or refutes or reproves or corrects the culture doesn't happen today. No, we've got cotton candy sermonettes don't want to make anybody mad. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. They don't want to offend anyone. And so they're only going to speak and talk about things that are vanilla, milk toast, don't have anything to do with anything, really. And they would not touch a hot button topic in the culture for no amount of money. And the reason that they won't do that, and listen, folks, this isn't just conjecture. And it isn't just my opinion. This is the truth because this is the result of a Barna survey. Are you aware of what's going on in the culture? Yes or no? Some of these issues, they list them. Yes or no? Do you speak about these issues and offer a biblical perspective to these issues from the pulpit, yes or no? It was almost, well, it was embarrassing. 80 some percent, and I don't remember exactly the percentage, but 80 some percent of pastors said, yes, we're aware. No, we are not going to talk about those things from the pulpit. You know why? Because they were fearful of their job. They were afraid that if they talked about these things, that the board that controls their salary compensation package and their security in their job would give them the boot. And they weren't wrong. That's part of the problem in the American church. We've got people that are carnal, that are not walking with the Lord. They're not seeking holiness and righteousness. We've got those kinds of people running churches, which is to say they're running pastors, which is to say that those pastors must be obedient to those people. It's a travesty, folks, but that in large measure is what's going on today. So, reason number one in Roy's list should be a no-brainer. Socialism is based on a materialistic worldview. Folks, a materialistic worldview is communism. A materialistic worldview is atheism. A materialistic worldview says that the universe, the physical, materialistic universe, is all that there is. Francis Schaeffer explained it this way: there's a lower story and an upper story. The lower story is the universe, the physical universe that we can observe. The upper story is the supernatural realm. Now, a lot of people that do not believe in a personal God, the God of the Bible, will tell you, well, of course, there's a supernatural realm. But here's why they say that. They say, yes, there's a supernatural realm because I believe that demons are real. Well, good for you. But guess what the demons believe about the God you say doesn't believe? The scripture says the demons believe and they tremble. So a materialistic worldview is atheism, is communism. But I want to make a correction here, and I've done this elsewhere. Communists, true communists, the elitists at the top, not the Lenin called them useful idiots, the foot soldiers that are used as the bludgeons to conquer people, to destroy an economy, and to usher in communism. The elitists of communists, they're actually set. That means they're not atheists. Because if they're Satanists, they worship Satan, that means they reject the God they know exists. But they've been so deceived in their minds that they're now serving the one that is going to destroy them. Communism and this view about the material universe. I want to share with you a quote from Dave Hunt. Dave Hunt, the late Dave Hunt, author of many books dealing with all sorts of things from on and on and on. I actually had the blessing and the pleasure of having Dave Hunt and Chuck Missler come to St. Mary's, Ohio, just south of where Kathy and I live. When we were there ministering, pastoring in at a Calvary chapel there in St. Mary's, we had Dave Hunt and Chuck Missler join us for a conference there. It was a fantastic time. Dave was one of the most humble, low key guys I think I've ever met in my life. But here's what he says about a materialistic worldview. Now, it's quite evident that people are more than their material bodies. Consider the areas of thought, of ideas, of morality. These are certainly immaterial things because they're not part of the material brain. I hope that you're tracking with me so far. Hey, friends, thanks for staying with us. Kathy's on it, isn't she? Technical diff. I told you this was probably going to happen. Again, our internet service out here is spotty at best, and that's when we have good weather. It's raining and overcast here in Ohio. So thank you for staying with me. As I was saying, we're talking about a materialistic worldview. What does that mean exactly? Well, we can prove that a materialistic, yeah, that's right, Don. Elevator music, please stand by. Oh, man. Yep, I can always count on Don bringing a lighter note and making me laugh. Thank you, Don. A materialistic worldview doesn't account for the supernatural. It doesn't account for anything outside of this body. So, materialistic worldview would also include thinking such as annihilationism. So, when you die, that's it. You just cease to exist. Your body turns back to dirt, and that's it. There's no consciousness beyond the temporal realm, space and time. So, that's part of it. So Hunt's going to argue here that immaterial things that do not have any material basis, such as thought, ideas, morality, those are not part of the material brain. Those are the result of having a brain, but those are not material things. Now, some might argue that thoughts and ideas and morality are the result of stimuli from the physical world, and I wouldn't object to that. But here's what author Dave Hunt says. He explains that why that's not the case. This is a quote from Dave Hunt. And by the way, if you're interested in where I got this quote, is from Hunt's book Seeking and Finding God. Seeking and Finding God, and you can get that at the Berean Call ministry if you're not familiar with that. But this is what Hunt said, quote, "A common misconception is the idea that we think in pictures. In our mind, we see a cow or tree or car, etc. But this last sentence has a number of words for which there is no physical object to picture. What is the picture of common, or of misconception, or of idea, or of think, or mind? To the ancient assertion, I think, therefore I am, must be added, my thoughts are non material, therefore so am I." I love that. And I think it was Voltaire that said that. That being the case, where do these thoughts reside? What form do they take? And what is their origin? These questions, for which materialism has no answer, must be seriously and honestly faced if we are to understand ourselves. There is no way that chemical reactions and electrical impulses among the brain's cells can explain a sense of right or wrong, the beauty of a sunset, or the rational and moral choices we continually make. No material of any kind, either in the brain or outside of it, has any qualities to explain our ability to understand ideas such as truth, justice, holiness, mercy, and grace. These concepts are totally non physical. They do not originate within the brain, nor are they a conditioned response to anything, anywhere in the entire physical universe. Indeed, the brain does not think at all. If thoughts originated in the brain, we would be prisoners of our brains, wondering what our brain would think of next, and compelled to do whatever the brain decided. On the contrary, every person is convinced that he or she makes rational choices by weighing alternatives, not because the brain gets an impulse to make the body react in a certain way. While we are prone to react impulsively to the stimuli of physical temptations that breed lust, we are not forced to do so. The moral struggles we all experience to resist temptations are proof that we are not stimulus response mechanisms ruled by impulses, but that we do make genuine choices, though our choices are not always rational or morally right. And I couldn't have said it better myself. That is exactly correct. And I use that same thought many times when I'm talking to people who believe in what Dave was talking against, who believe in evolution and some of those things. I always ask them, well, where did morality come from? Where did morality come from? And they're usually stumped by that. Now, some brave heart will offer this. Well, morality was developed through community living and the decision of what would be best for the common good. And I ask them, where do you get the concept of the common good in evolution? And I wait, and they'll struggle. And the reason they struggle is because evolution teaches what? Survival of the fittest. The strongest survive. Evolution dictates that only those who are aggressive enough to ensure that their genes make it into the next generation will survive. That's why it is absolutely astounding to me that our government indoctrination camps, the public school system, not too long ago came up with this new uh, new program against bullying. Perhaps you're familiar with this. Nobody should bully anybody else. So they tell kids that, and then they sit them down in the next breath and say, well, there's really no significance to you. You're just a product of time and chance and mutations. You've come from the goo, you made it to the zoo, and now we have human beings. And we're really no different, no more significant, no more of value than a worm in the ground. But don't bully anybody because people are special and they deserve to be treated. Do you see the schizophrenia in that? It is absolute nonsense. The stuff that our kids are taught, it is no wonder they're confused, folks. So in my book, again, I'm just these are just, you know what? This would make a good chapter in another random thoughts book, don't you think? I'm just sharing a little bit from my book Upside Down in America. I'm talking about social justice. Hopefully, before the program's up, we'll get to that point. But social justice, folks. Hey, friends, thank you. So I'm almost to my prediction. I predicted before we went on the air 3 times. So that's twice. Stay with us. Thank you. So social justice as it is manifest today in our culture, this is what makes it so tragic. Christians are buying into this. Christians are talking the social justice language. And folks, you need to understand that the social justice language is directly out of communism. Words mean something different. Okay, so I guess I'm a prophet now because there's three. Social justice is a perversion of Christian charity. See, Satan doesn't originate anything. He just copies, mimics God. Christian charity is true justice, is true social ministry. But those two things, when you put social justice together, they mean something very specific to communists. They mean something very specific to God haters. And you need to understand what that means exactly. So, social justice is really a perversion of Christian charity. The perversion of social justice is that instead of the individual and the church serving individuals and their communities with charitable works, social justice advocates call on the government to take a bigger and bigger role in doling out goodies to those the social justice advocates consider worthy of the aid. Get that in your mind, folks. Christian charity is about individuals, churches, Christian ministries, and organizations helping those in need. The government doling these things out is not justice. It certainly isn't biblical justice. There is absolutely nothing. Well, let me give you this quote. This is from my book. Friends, there is absolutely nothing in the Constitution that allows the federal government to become involved in acts of benevolence. The primary constitutional role of both state and federal governments is to protect and defend the liberty and security of America and Americans. That is the primary responsibility of governments. Notwithstanding that obstacle to the current shenanigans emanating from Washington, D.C., which, by the way, the politicians have completely ignored, and we've allowed them to get away with doing that. But even if there was some provision for acts of benevolence, those acts should only be pursued by common consensus. There's no common consensus for what's going on today, folks. What social justice has done in practice is advocate for theft, insisting that the federal or state government use taxpayer money to give to groups of people or individuals that does not serve the common good is simply theft. Two additional byproducts, two additional wicked byproducts of theft disguised as social justice is that a dependent class of people is created who, because of the illegal largesse of the government, are handicapped and never able to rise above their economic state. You wonder why there's generational welfare? It's because the government has created that intentionally. Now, think about that, folks. I hear a lot of Christians saying, well, we should be interested in justice. Yes, we should be interested in justice. And the first focus that we should turn our gaze to, the first thing that we should address is a government that's out of control, spending money that is not theirs on other things that is outside the purview of their responsibility and authority. Now, what that's going to require of Christians, churches, and Christian ministries is that they step up. Hey, how about this? How about this, church? How about instead of building that new building, how about instead of expanding that already gigantic campus? And I've got a church in mind. I'm not going to call them out, but they've got about $100 million campus, numerous buildings, gyms, swimming pools, you name it. How about instead of spending $100 million to create a Christian Disney World where Christians can go and be apart from the culture. How about spending that $100 million to feed and do the things that the church can do in the community in which you live? How about that? How about this, Christians? How about instead of spending money on things you really don't need, how about taking that money and buying something that you know for a fact someone has need of? And I'm not talking about something that is a luxury, that is a desire, that is a want. I'm talking about something that's a need. How about this? How about church? You make funds available to take care of utility bills and other things for people that just cannot make ends meet for that month. How about that? How about instead of spending money on all these new projects, we put money actually to work to show people in our communities that Jesus really does have hands and feet. If we want to be just, brothers and sisters, if we want to address this topic of justice in our nation, then we must demand that the government cease immediately with all of these programs, all of these great social programs that don't do anything but enslave people and create. And you know this is true because you hear it and you see it repeatedly. Okay. Okay. So exceeded my expectations. Thanks for sticking with us. The two additional wicked byproducts, and I'm quoting from my book here, folks, of theft disguised as social justice is that a dependent class of people is created who because of the illegal largesse of the government are handicapped and never able to rise above their economic state. Indeed, welfare in America has become such a travesty that we now have generational welfare recipients who are quite happy living off other people's industriousness. This is why there is an attitude of entitlement among so many Americans. Many people have always had their sustenance handed to them for free, and the thought that the gravy train could ever end is the farthest thing from their minds. Now, a second result of social justice, which is why the politicians are happy to continue to support it and see it continue, is that a permanent voter base is created. People who are entitled will vote for whomever tells them that the free handouts will continue if they elect them. Folks, we are seeing this right now in our nation. By the way, folks, America is under siege. Do you understand that? America is under siege. And those that are trying to topple America, if they succeed, and we're already seeing this manifested right now, churches are being burned, Christian symbols are being destroyed. If these people are successful in what they're trying to do in America, the first thing they're coming after is the church, the true church, not the spineless church, not the apostate church, not those churches that have bowed the knee to state, not the churches and the pastors and the Christians that are really humanists. They're just Christians in name only. they're coming after Christians. If these Luciferians manage to pull this off, and no, I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm just trying to alert those of you who might think, well, this will all go away and things will get back to normal. Hey, folks, this is the new normal. This is the new normal. Thank you, Don. History is repeating itself. This is the new normal, except it's not the Jews, it's Christians. They're coming after us, folks. They'll come after me. I've been very vocal about what is happening, and I don't pull any punches with anybody. Now, that's got a lot of people upset. I'm not the favorite pastor in my city, and I can tell you that. And you know why? Because I tell the truth. People don't like the truth. They like it as long as they can consider whether they want to do anything about it or not. When you speak it, you call them out on it, and you tell them, why aren't you in the fight? Why aren't you living the truth? Why aren't you speaking the truth? Why aren't you telling your congregation the truth? Oh, no, no, no. We can't have that. We can't have that. Hey, see my shirt? You like that? In this household, we support law enforcement. Number of reasons why. This whole defund the police, defund law enforcement. Do you understand that is a strategy of Islam? We see it unfolding right. Minnesota and Minneapolis was set up from the beginning, folks. This whole thing was a setup. They had the right people in the right place at the right time. The Minneapolis City Council was already off the rails. And what they're proposing there now is just ludicrous. And it will not work. And somebody's going to get severely hurt, if not fatally hurt, if this strategy that they're trying to employ and implement there in Minneapolis is followed through with. Somebody's going to get hurt. But I can tell you who won't be caught holding a bag. It won't be those Luciferians on the Minneapolis City Council. Oh, no, no, no. They'll find somebody else to blame. So, folks, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is we are in a fight for our lives. This is real. And no, I have no idea when Christ is coming back. And that, listen, folks, there's nothing wrong with having a theology of the imminence of the return of Christ. We should be looking for his return. However, if your theology and your doctrine of the return of Christ has made you a slothful, lazy, so folks, listen, stand by for technical difficulties. So clearly, the enemy does not want me to continue. I'm going to do it anyway. If your theology, as I was saying, if your theology of the return of Christ is is that I'm just going to sit back and wait and I don't need to do anything, You got the wrong theology, dude, brother and sister. Your theology should not make you immobile. It should not make you think, well, I'm just going to forget all this, hide from it, act like it isn't going on. I'm going to ignore it. You can't sit there and watch America burn down and say, well, my theology says Christ is coming back for me, so I'm out of here soon anyway. Why should I care? Are you serious? Aren't we told to go and rescue the perishing? Aren't we told to go and tell people that are trapped in sexual sin that God did not create them for that? Aren't we told to go and admonish people and remind them that life is sacred, that the most sacred place on the planet should be the womb of a mother? Shouldn't we go and try to persuade women not to dismember, violently tear apart their unborn children? If we really believe children are a gift from God, we would be out there every opportunity that we had to remind people of that. If we really, really believed what the scripture says, wouldn't we be out there trying to rescue those that are caught in sex trafficking, in labor trafficking, in satanic ritual abuse? Wouldn't we be trying to expose? And listen, folks, this is a thing. It's coming. It's already showing its ugly face. It's being pressed for normalcy. I'm talking about pedophilia. Wouldn't we be standing up and speaking against that? Can we agree that it's time for Christians, it's time for churches to band together if necessary in the communities in which they exist and begin an offensive against evil? Doesn't Ephesians chapter 5 tell us that we are to expose evil wherever it exists? Aren't we told that we are to, Luke 19, occupy until he comes? Well, that phrase, that command, occupy, folks, that's not a defensive position. That's to go take territory, go fight the enemy. That's what that means. But too many churches, too many Christians, they're happy to just attend their holy huddles on Sundays or Saturdays or Wednesdays or whatever day they go. They're happy to just do that. And they think that they've checked the box. I've served God. I attended a church service. I don't know how that thinking has so permeated Christianity, but it has. But let me tell you this, brother and sister, serving God is not going to church. It's not attending a church service. You go there to worship, to exalt, to give praise, to have fellowship with other believers, to be encouraged and equipped by the teaching of the Word of God. But serving God takes place when you leave the building. Serving God takes place in the streets. Serving God takes place in your neighborhoods. That's what it means to serve God. It's out in the communities. I would encourage you folks to find a place of worship, a Bible believing, Bible teaching. That reminds me, I've got several emails I need to respond to as a result of the conference. One of the things that I always try to do, and I know I'm running out of time now, so I'll make this fast. One of the things that I try to do is encourage people to find a Bible believing, Bible teaching local body of believers. And you'd be better off, folks, if it's a small body of believers, small body of believers. And this is why you're better off, Because the larger that church gets, the more alternative views to Christianity will be present. Do you understand what I'm saying? Large churches also have large numbers of CINOs, Christians in name only. They don't stand for or sit for or tolerate pure biblical teaching, admonition to live a biblical life. They just don't. Now, there are exceptions, of course, few exceptions. So find a small local assembly of believers where you can get plugged in. Or if there isn't one in a reasonable distance from your own home, start one in your own home. That may be where we're headed anyway. The direction that we're headed in America is it's going to be home fellowships, home churches. And that is absolutely fine. And I think it's wonderful. And I would encourage you, if you can't find a good church, start one in your own home. Invite your neighbors to come and join you. So, folks, I appreciate you hanging with us through all these technical difficulties today. Again, it's been a real honor and a blessing for me to come and share with you some thoughts in my heart. Folks, if you would like to support the ministry, that's been scrolling. That information is there. We appreciate that very much. In the least, be praying for Kathy and I. The ministry, the Transforming Word ministry, is expanding. It is growing. So we need your prayers. We ask that you would pray for us. And we thank you for doing that. We appreciate you joining us tonight. And as I always say when I close the live show, remember, and this is from Romans 12, verses 1 and 2, where we're commanded to renew our mind daily. That's not an option, folks. Renew your mind daily. Fill it with the beauty of Jesus Christ. God bless you today. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week.